It is Talk 25 to 4. Let's move into this story. Dyslexia. I mentioned, I did a bit of a rant at the beginning of the hour. Dyslexia affecting 1 in 10 Britons, causing difficulty with reading, writing, learning across many subjects. Of course, because of that, without proper support, it leads to educational underachievement, low confidence. Yet, with the right help, dyslexic kids can thrive by using alternative learning methods. And I was talking, and Jamie Wallet is with us, author of The Dyslexic Edge. I'm bound to ask, good to see you again, by the way, Jamie.
Good to see you.
Eventually you broke through whatever barriers were there and you became a very successful businessman, worth a few quid, good businesses, and done really well. But you had to jump through. What we were talking about earlier was these school day moments when nobody knows what the hell's going on.
Yeah.
You could either be shouted at, bullied, ostracised, or a mixture of all three.
Oh yeah. I grew up in Bethnal Green in East London, and I ended up going to 3 different secondary schools because of my own behavioural issues.
Yeah.
But my behavioural issues were linked to me. The frustration of not being able to get by because people just thought I was thick. They would constantly, give you detention, go and face the wall, stay behind, write 100 lines. Try writing 100 lines when you're dyslexic.
Yeah.
It's like torture.
Did no one? You're not exactly an old man. So which just really kind of highlights how recent it is that they've only just got their head around this, educationalists, and worked out that there's this thing called dyslexia.
Yeah, but it still happens today, and so I go in and out of schools all up and down the country, and some schools are good at it and some schools are bad at it. But in the majority, schools don't have the right funding or the right time to deal with it. And I'm not just talking about state schools here, private schools too. I go into some private schools that simply do not want to deal with it.
Yeah.
But it's really important if you can get a child diagnosed and then they can be understood. Forget about the support. The support is useful, giving them 15 minutes extra, etc., etc. But what's really important is that they're understood, so that when they're not doing what someone might class as their best, it's understood it's not because they're not trying, it's because they find it significantly more difficult.
It's weird, isn't it? I was quoting a friend of mine who has got a very good job in the financial world. Doesn't really have to work, but chooses to work, all of that stuff. But, similar journey, really. When he was at school, and this is the confusing bit for him, it was discovered when he was about 9 or 10 that he was about 6 years behind in reading, but about 6 years ahead in maths. Now, even that, they just went, oh, that's weird, isn't it?
Yeah.
Somebody should have gone, hang on a second, this kid's clearly not stupid, because he's really clever with numbers. In fact, he's super clever with numbers. He's doing, A-level papers when he's like 12, and yet he just struggled to read. No one even then, similar age to yourself, Jamie, no one said, maybe there's something to investigate here.
It's crazy. And the people, obviously parents, so the 2 biggest blockers to children getting diagnosed, believe it or not, is the parent first, because the parent believes if they get diagnosed, they won't get into the right school, they don't want them. It's, poor little Harry, he will get over it, he's just a slow starter.
Yes.
It's that sort of attitude. And then the second biggest blocker are teachers, because teachers know that if they get the child diagnosed, there's not the support there for them anyway, so they just try and help them on through.
Plod along.
Which is a real shame, because my daughters, both 9 and 8, one is dyslexic and one isn't dyslexic, and actually when we went to get Allegra tested, it was amazing. She goes and does this assessment. I come out and I said to her, do you think you're dyslexic, yes or no? And she was like, no. And I was like, yeah, you're right. And you should have seen the look on her face. Wow. She was so sad. And then I said, of course you're dyslexic. And she jumped up into my arms, and because she wanted to be like Daddy. Because we had done so much positive talking around dyslexia. 35% of entrepreneurs are dyslexic, 40% are self-made millionaires. Some of the people I feature in my book, Kelly Hoppen, Theo Paphitis, some of the most famous successful people on earth. Richard Branson, who I spent some time with at the beginning of this book. We need to see that dyslexia is definitely, there are strengths. I like to say it's a strength and a struggle. We should never forget the struggle. And that's not just for children, it's for adults too.
I mentioned James Well. He used to be obviously a presenter here, and sadly James lost his battle with cancer a couple of months ago, and at his funeral, his brother presided over the funeral, and his brother told the story. He said, there's me. He said, I went to university, I'm rolling around in degrees and all sorts. He said, no, the first time I sat in a radio studio with James, and just watched him randomly taking calls on all sorts of subjects, from politics to, you know, health, whatever it was. Bang, 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 bang. And I thought, isn't it funny that this kid, he said, was written off at school as someone with no talent. He said, and I'm sitting there, the man with the impressive degree, and here's my brother, who is clearly has an unbelievable talent for doing something that he said I could never do. It's not linked to your talent, is it?
No.
It's not linked to your abilities. But if you went through school and were told it is, that you're going to get nowhere. We've had loads of comments already from people saying you're not going to be, you know, you're not good enough. You're not, you know, if you don't put a bit of graft in, you'll learn to read.
Exactly. So it's that, you know, you must try harder. It's the worst thing you can tell to someone who's already trying as hard as they possibly can.
The isolation of a child, the sense of isolation and confusion, and just desperation.
And then what they do is they then send them home with homework. And one of the things that I'm trying to get across at the moment to schools is, one, we live in a world today where we say you shouldn't take work home, but yet we're still teaching children to take homework home, which is a bit crazy. But you try and being dyslexic, having spent 8 hours at school, you are exhausted because you have had to work so significantly harder than your peers. And then you go home and you're forced to do homework, which creates nothing but conflict in the household, which then damages relationships between parents and children. It's absolute nonsense. We need to understand it and we need to work with it. Another thing that we just have to remind ourselves is the education system was built after us humans were about. We designed this thing ourselves, and we designed it not fit for purpose for those of us that are not neurotypical. Now that's not fair. We can't design something not for 100% of society and then ostracize those that it's not quite right for.
100%. I mean, just talk us through then. So what happens if you, I mean, can you learn not to be dyslexic? Can you learn to read if you couldn't previously read? Or is there, I know some people wear certain glasses and things like that. What's the deal there? How do you get through it? How do you break through it?
I think you can definitely improve on certain things. So you can learn certain tools and tricks to make life easier for you. But I think it's actually accepting that writing isn't your strength, or, as you said earlier on, most dyslexic are actually quite good at math. So then leaning into their strengths and maybe leaning away from their weaknesses, because let's really face it, I mean, in today's world, it just doesn't matter that much anymore, does it? So I am dyslexic, and I run 13 companies around the world, employing a few thousand staff, and yes, I do send messages with some spelling errors in them. So what? People have to get over it.
So when it comes to reading, there was, I mean, how old were you before you could say, you know, before you would confidently say, I can now read?
Well, I don't know if I've ever felt that confident, to be honest with you. I mean, I've got some great stories. I struggle reading to my children. David Walliams, one of the most famous children's book writers right now, I've really got it in for him, because he's so difficult. His writing is so difficult to read. So my girls go, Daddy, I want you to read to me, and I'm like, oh no. You know, I'm fearful of it, and they joke with me how I make errors and stuff, but I'm still not a confident reader. But, you know, I go and do public public speaking and stuff, and I'm fine. But give me a teleprompter or some auto cue, and I start to get sweaty palms. And
I'd never thought about that with reading to your kids and stuff like that. I mean, these are obvious things, you know, and I read to mine, and sometimes with mixed results, you know. By the way, I can give you all the spoilers on the tiger that came to tea, by the way. It's easy to, but yeah, there are areas where you're kind of, there's pressure on, isn't there? There's pressure in all sorts of areas.
Of course, and this is why I like to remind people, because there's a lot of people going around the world right now saying that dyslexia is simply a superpower, and it definitely does have some superpower tendencies to it, without a doubt. But we should not forget that it's a struggle too, not for just for children, but for adults. One of the things that I really hate, Ian, at the moment is I cannot simply do any homework with my children, because they are more advanced than me. And they are 9 and 10.
I have similarly to mine, who are 11 and 7, I have a fundamental problem with homework. That's a whole other issue. The whole school model of one size fits all is frankly ridiculous the more you look into it. I don't know how, I'm not suggesting I have all the answers, but there's a lot going on there. A couple of messages come in. Ernest says, Martin in Clapham says, I'm age 52. I've suffered all my life with dyslexia, and school was hell for me, despite being top of the class in maths. There it is again. I was one of the first to embrace computers in my school because of spell check. I then found spreadsheets, which changed my life. Started a business 30 years ago, now worth around about 8 million quid. So there you go.
Congratulations and well done.
One here from Dave in Northampton, reference dyslexia. Thank goodness for spell checkers. When I was 10, my female teacher used to bring the male teacher in to cane me because I couldn't do it, because she couldn't do it hard enough. Luckily, like the previous caller, I was good at maths. I left school at 15, spent 15 years in the army, then 20 years in the fire service, now retired. So, but having to go through that. We want to cane this kid. In fact, let's get a male teacher in to cane the kid harder because he's not up with his reading and spelling.
And it's not over. So it's easy to find 60 and 70-year-old or 80-year-old white men tell you that dyslexia was a challenge for them, but now look at me. You try having a look at a 15-year-old black boy in London right now, and you layer on racism, poverty, and dyslexia. You just don't know where to start. The problems still exist, and we need to talk about it more. Thank you to people like you, Ian, for taking these subjects on. But we need to not only talk about it, we need the schools to have actual measured results on what they're going to do about it. 15% of their classroom, on average, are going to be dyslexic. They are simply not structured or set up correctly to deal with that.
And final one from Reg says, I'm dyslexic. When I left school, I couldn't read or write at all. I mean, going through your whole school and not being able to read and write. Again, the level of confusion and frustration. Could barely spell my own name, but thank goodness for the spoken text, which is how I'm speaking to you today. And also thank goodness for audiobooks as a child. I always learned to be able to read a book like everyone else, and now I've got the next best thing. I can listen to them, and they're fantastic. Have a great weekend, by the way, says Reg. I mean, that's evolution in technology, isn't it, right there?
It is, and
which has changed it.
Give a dyslexic person AI, and we are going to see some incredible results, because the dyslexic brain does think differently. It is creative. It is problem solving. So with the power of AI, I think you're going to see this statistic of 35% of those entrepreneurs with dyslexia probably climb to 50, 60%, wow. 40% self-made millionaires. Maybe we're going to see that go to 70 or 80.
Isn't that interesting that figure? I know you wrote your book, The Dyslexic Edge. You have a copy of it in front of you there, which covers all of those topics and issues, doesn't it, about success. It's just interesting. It kind of feeds into that sort of superpower. I know it sounds a bit twee, but the superpower thing. Something's going on there. Yeah. Or is it just that dyslexics perhaps try harder in other areas to make up for the issues in reading and writing?
Well, look, we did a lot of research around this, and actually what we came up with is that there's two types of people born in this world. There are explorers and exploiters. The majority are exploiters for obvious reason. If you had 85% of the world trying to explore, it would be quite a chaotic world. But roughly you have 15% that are explorers, are dyslexic thinkers, and 85% that are exploiters. The explorers, back in history, were the people that were going out, finding new territories, finding food, bringing it back. They were the ones putting their lives on the line, risking everything to find new territories. And when they did, the exploiters exploited it to make the world what it is today. And I would say there's a lot of truth in that now, and that's why you see these visionaries, these Elon Musks, these Richard Bransons, all are typically dyslexic or have ADHD or a number of other.
A couple of people have asked if there's an audio version of your book.
Of course.
Which would be ironic.
It would be terrible for me not to do that.
Absolutely awful.
You would kick me out of here now.
So you've come a long way since Bethnal Green. You could have gone to York Hall and started boxing, of course. But you didn't do that route.
No.
You went a different one.
Yeah, I mean, typically with dyslexia, you're leaving school at 16, no qualifications, and you're told, well, the only opportunity for you is going to be to sign on. Yeah. And I made a decision there and then, well, I don't need any qualifications if I'm not being interviewed. So I just need to work for myself.
That's a great theory, yeah.
So I started my first business cleaning windows. I then went on to car sales, and as I say, I now own businesses all over the world, and I'm very fortunate to come from Bethnal Green and have had those opportunities.
But you have worked your whatsits off to do it, to be fair. Jamie, great to see you again. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks,
the book, The Dyslexic Edge, is out now and in audio form as well. Jamie Waller with us here on Talk.